In today's video, we're taking a look at some NHL offseason rumors, mainly focusing on the Vancouver Canucks, Phildelphia Flyers, and Pittsburgh Penguins, with some potential connections to the Montreal Canadiens and Colorado Avalanche, and we also have a signing to discuss as well. We'll jump into all the latest news and rumors coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to discuss today, so let's dive right in. First up, we have a quick signing to announce. The Vegas Golden Knights have extended goaltender Oskar Dansk for another one-year contract worth $700,000 at the NHL level, $225,000 at the American Hockey League level, so this is a two-way deal. Clearly, Dansk has been a pretty solid minor league goaltender for them in the last couple of years during their existence here so far. He did get into 5 NHL games. If you recall back in their first season, they had a bit of a goalie injury problem where everybody was going down hurt for some time. I know Fleury had gone down, Subban had gone down. Dansk at that point was the number 3 or number 4 guy in their system, and they ended up playing a lot of goalies there over a stretch of games, but he did get a little bit of action. Didn't have the greatest showing, but still young at the time. He's about 26 now. He's been a pretty solid American Hockey League goaltender for the past 2 to 3 years, so he's certainly worth keeping in the system, especially where it's unlikely that they re-sign Robin Lehner due to their salary cap situation. He very well could end up having a shot at being the backup to Marc-Andre Fleury next year. Hard to say. I mean, now that Malcolm Subban's not in the picture, if Leonard leaves for free agency, they're going to need a backup goalie with a relatively cheap contract to fill that void. Not sure if he's really the best solution. I mean, at the AHL level, he's been good. Probably has earned himself an opportunity for sure, and it could be a go-to solution for them as a backup goalie, depending on what else they decide to do. But decent signing here, small, but potentially important for Vegas. Now, as I mentioned, we have a lot of different rumors to take a look at as well. First up, I want to take a look at another article from the Philadelphia Inquirer, again by Sam Carchidi, looking at a mailbag type article. We're answering questions from Flyers fans. One of the questions he was asked was point blank, which Flyer do you think is the most likely to be traded this offseason? And his answer again was Shayne Gostisbehere. Now, this author has wrote about the fact that he feels Gostisbehere will be traded this offseason on multiple occasions during his NHL pause. We talked about this about a week and a half ago, something along those lines, where again he went over the fact in an article outlining the fact that he feels Gostisbehere was going to be traded this offseason. Even when the playoffs resume, he felt there was a pretty good chance Gostisbehere might not get in the lineup. He might end up being their number 7 defenseman and might end up watching a fair bit of the time. At one point this year, Gostisbehere battled a knee injury. Plus, he was a healthy scratch on a few occasions as well. And when he wasn't in the lineup, the other 6 defensemen that were playing were certainly doing a pretty decent job. So it might be challenging and difficult for him to get back in. I mean, even though he's had back-to-back consecutive, subpar seasons, the author here, and I do agree, still has a fair bit of value. He's still relatively young. He still has a pretty good contract, considering he can get back to playing the way he did a couple of years ago. So I think the Flyers will be careful with trading him because they're going to want to get a good return. I mean, this is the couple of times now that he's mentioned that he feels a potential second-round pick or a 20-goal scorer might get the job done. Now, of course, you probably noticed in the thumbnail of this video, I had Gostisbehere going to Montreal, and I really still feel that that's a tremendous fit for the Montreal Canadiens. Now, as we know, they could use some help on the left side. I know I've heard fans mention numerous times, but they have Romanov coming that can fill that void. And you know what? You're right. I have a lot of confidence in Alexander Romanov. I think he'll step in and get an NHL position pretty much immediately, whether it be this year, if he's able to play, if they allow that contract to be effective. If not, next year for sure. Romanov's going to be a solid defenseman, but in the early going, especially in the first couple of years, they're going to want to shelter his minutes and not have him play against the league's top competitors. So likely a third pair role to start off and let him work his way up, I think would make a lot of sense for his development. So personally, if it were me, if you take a look at their right side, it's pretty solid in the top 2 with Weber and Petrie. The left side, they get Ben Sherratt. And after that, there's some question marks. Brett Kulak's a potential player who could play there, but if for me, I would consider acquiring Gostisbehere, and then you get Romanov coming in as well. Your left side could be Sherratt, Gostisbehere, and Romanov. Consider trading Brett Kulak, and then on the right side, you have Weber and Petrie, possibly Cale Fleury. You might dip into free agency, maybe grab a veteran on a cheaper contract on a short term who could play a little bit of a number 7, number 8 role just to give you some extra added insurance back there. And that's how I would handle the Habs blue line if it were me. If I were Marc Bergevin, that's what I would consider doing. The other reason I feel this deal is perfect for Montreal is that Bergevin has loaded up on draft picks. As we discussed before, when there was possibility of the draft being held in June, Now, at that point, though, the one thing that was going to be not so good about it was that there wouldn't be any trades because there's still playoffs to complete and teams wouldn't really be looking to make deals, even if they were able to, because they wouldn't be able to trade off their rosters before the playoffs were completed. That was going to complicate things. Teams like Montreal and Ottawa and others really stockpiled the draft picks, and they did that to use them as currency for making acquisitions. They're not going to use every single pick to get a player from the draft that obviously Bergevin could package up either something off the roster with these picks or multiple picks to move up, or he gives them a lot of flexibility, a lot of options. So if the author of this article feels that a potential return for Gostisbehere might be a second round pick or possibly a second round pick and something else with it, potentially even offer 2 second round picks or maybe a second round pick and a player off the roster, I just think they have more than what it takes to give the Flyers a good deal. I think he really helps their left side of their blue line, and to me it just makes a lot of sense. And after numerous articles now indicating that this player is likely to be traded this offseason, I think the odds of it happening are pretty good, and I think it only makes sense for the Habs to inquire. But let me know your thoughts down below. As a Habs fan, what do you think of the idea I've suggested for their blue line here moving forward into next year? Now, I also want to reference another article, this time in The Athletic, talking about the Penguins, authored by Josh Yeo, another mailbag-type article where he was asked about the goaltending situation in Pittsburgh, which goalie is likely to be traded, could they keep both, or how is this going to work for Pittsburgh? And he basically goes on to say that he feels that Matt Murray is the more likely guy to be traded out of Pittsburgh. Clearly for them to sign both goaltenders, which would be nice luxury to have, but it's going to cost them dearly because they'd have to move out money in the form of losing another significant player. And of course, as we mentioned before, teams also need to be keeping in mind about the Seattle expansion draft. The Penguins already lost their goaltender last time around to Vegas. They probably don't want to see that happen again. And Tristan Jarry's this past year, at least in my opinion, proved to be more than capable of taking over for Matt Murray. Might be the cheaper option where he's a little bit less established, and obviously Murray would fetch the greater return value. So to me, it makes sense to sign Jarry, move on from Murray. I know he's got a couple Stanley Cups, but really ever since that last cup, to me, he hasn't been quite the same, and his play hasn't been as strong. I think they can roll the dice here, because if they don't do it now, they're going to be at risk to have, expansion draft 2.0 here and lose another goaltender. So if they don't trade a goalie now, the odds of them having to do it in the next year would be pretty good. And obviously both these guys need contracts. Murray's going to demand more term, more money after being more established, and it only makes sense to me that they just can't keep both. So Murray, to me, would fetch the better return. They could likely get some future assets in that regard. The Penguins don't have the deepest of prospect pools. They don't have a ton of draft picks, things like that. They've been in win-now mode and going for it year after year. So they've kind of depleted their cupboard full of assets for the future in that regard. So perhaps they could look into that type of return to get a Murray deal done. I know there's been a lot of talk before that Joe Sakic and the Avalanche were very much interested in a Matt Murray trade, and that there were discussions previously that never obviously went too far, but there was a lot of interest on the Avalanche part based on rumors and reports that we've seen in the past. And in my opinion, once we hit this 2014 playoff format this summer, I think the Avalanche are going to be a team that is going to be potentially doing some damage. I'm not sure they can go all the way. I know they're a fun, exciting team to watch, a team on the rise, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if they maybe win a round or two, get a little bit further in the playoffs than they did before, and then find out, we really need an upgrade in goal in order to make our team that much stronger. And obviously a guy like Murray, who maybe could use some fresh scenery, has got some Stanley Cups to his name, could be the answer in goal there to come in and really help solidify that position for them. Not really clear if Grubauer and Francouz are going to be the guys to get that done for Colorado. I guess we'll see how things go. Obviously, this playoff format is going to answer a lot of questions on what teams need to do before going into the 2020-2021 season. So we still have lots of action now to kind of evaluate that. But as of right now, I think the odds of Murray being traded are pretty good. And I do think that Colorado might just be a prime team where he could end up going to this offseason. Now, as I mentioned, we have a lot of news on the Vancouver Canucks front that I wanted to discuss as well. Rick Dhaliwal had several news updates on several Canuck players. They do have a lot of very interesting decisions to make this offseason. Clearly, the Canucks were a team that improved a lot this past year and certainly surprised many, myself included. I did expect improvement. Not really sure I saw the improvement that was going to be that drastic that quickly, but good for them to get that done. I know JT Miller was a very pleasant surprise. Quinn Hughes was a dynamic rookie. Elias Pettersson was strong again. Unfortunately for Brock Besser, he spent a good chunk of the year injured again, which is not good for him. But either way, the team took tremendous steps. We did see as well well during the year that when Jacob Markstrom was injured, that was a big hole there. Thatcher Demko did not appear to be ready to really take over that net on a full-time basis, and they were exposed in their weakness and depth in the goaltending department during his absence. So I guess, obviously, like I said, they have a lot of questions here, and they have three big players in Tyler Toffoli, Jacob Markstrom, as well as defenseman Chris Tanev, who are pending unrestricted free agents, and there's a lot of talk of whether any or all will be back. They're obviously not going to be easy for Jim Benning to do, because they do have a somewhat of a tight salary cap situation, and obviously, like I said, Dhaliwal offers some updates here on all these situations. Now, it was previously reported that Chris Tanev might even be willing to accept a one-year deal and pretty much do whatever it took for him to remain with the Vancouver Canucks organization. That was previously reported, I think, somewhere in the last week or so, but now Dhaliwal says that he has sources telling him that that's really not the case. Obviously, to hit free agency and the amount of experience you need to get and been in the league for a long time, almost 10 years, for him to become a UFA, for him to take a one-year deal, just doesn't see it happening. He's been making close to $4.5 million on his current contract. He's a fairly solid top four defenseman on most teams. And Dhaliwal says that he feels that if Tanev doesn't sign with Vancouver, that he could probably get a longer term and decent money elsewhere. His agent also had some comments in his current update. He kind of said the same sort of thing, that Tanev likely would do just fine on the open market, but they do have enough younger defensemen in their system that very well could prove as a replacement if they need to. But there is possibly Tanev returns, but the reports that we saw previously saying he would sign a one-year deal and maybe even accept a lower amount just to stay might not necessarily be accurate, and it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, it takes a long time to get to free agency for him just to take a one-year deal and roll the dice like that. But if he can probably get more term and more money elsewhere, I just don't think the odds are really all that favorable that he returns. Now, in regards to Tyler Toffoli, he certainly had a tremendous hot start with the Canucks, and Dhaliwal did have a quote from his agent Pat Brisson, who did confirm that obviously Toffoli really liked the direction of the team. He really liked the city, and obviously appears to be very interested in re-signing. He said he's had different conversations with Benning on and off, but of course, like many teams right now, it's hard to get too deep into conversations because they don't have a clear path on how the salary cap is going to be for the next few years. We've heard different reports that it could remain flat, maybe seeing a different increase of a small amount, maybe. But I know there's a lot of NHL insiders saying that when we do get further along in this process here before getting ready for next year, that it could come to be that they have an agreement for a flat cap or maybe with a minor increase, but it remains the same, potentially for 2 or 3 years to give the league a little bit more certainty that way as they try to recover from all the lost revenue from this pandemic. So not quite clear how that's going to impact free agents, but Pat Brisson did say that even though this might have an impact on some free agents, he feels that higher end top free agents like a Toffoli is still going to get paid well. So he doesn't seem to think it's going to impact this particular client too much. So I guess we will see what it's going to cost for Jim Benning to re-sign Tyler Toffoli, but it does appear as though there is a lot of interest there. And on Jacob Markstrom's front, like I said before, they were exposed when he went down injured, and I don't think they have any choice but to do everything they can to make him priority number one to re-sign. I mean, of all these players, I think it would be nice to keep them all, but I think Markstrom has to be number one priority, with Toffoli being number two and Tanev being number three. See what's left over. But Markstrom is the guy that needs to continue playing good for them between the pipes. Demko, to me, is not quite ready yet, but can continue being the backup. They've got Michael DiPietro on the way, but he's not NHL ready, at least not on a full-time basis, in my opinion. Not quite yet, but I can see him being there in the near future. But Markstrom has been a top goaltender in this league for the last couple of years, kind of an underrated guy, doesn't get as much attention. But to me, you can make an argument that he could have been their most valuable player this past year because of all the losses that racked up when he was out of the lineup. So Dhaliwal didn't have a lot of new updates in Markstrom in this particular case, but we've seen remarks from Benning saying that essentially he's had conversations with all these guys. He's interested in keeping them all, but it's going to prove difficult. Now, of course, Dhaliwal also went on to mention a couple quick things about some younger players in the Canucks organization. Forward Reed Boucher, who's been in their American Hockey League team for the past couple of years, has a fair bit of NHL experience, mostly with New Jersey, some with Vancouver. Had a pretty solid American Hockey League season last year, is getting some interest from Russia, so they could potentially end up in the KHL. I don't really see an NHL future future for him, especially with Vancouver, but if he wants to remain with the organization, I can see them signing him to a two-way deal if he wants to stay there, but he can probably make more money in the KHL, so pretty good chance he leaves because apparently is some pretty significant interest. Update on one of their prospects, Petrus Palmu. Dollywall referred to him as almost the forgotten prospect. He was playing with their AHL team in Utica, left that team in January 2019 to go back and play in Europe. This past year wasn't invited to camp, and obviously it looks as though he's going to remain over in Europe for at least one more year. And it appears as though there was a bit of a communication breakdown between him and the coach at the American Hockey League team in Utica, and the coach is still going to be returning there. They've confirmed that. So without a change in coach, I'm not sure Palmu really is going to end up having any level of success, and I do think there's a possibility here that he could end up being a trade target, maybe get a fresh start somewhere else. I know with how we talked about the fact that the Canucks would like to sign all three of these players in Tanev, Toffoli, and Markstrom. The only way they're going to be able to do that or have any shot at all, really even to keep 2 out of 3, they're going to have some money go out somewhere else, and obviously making some trades with some sweeteners, adding some prospects into the mix is one way to do that. So some guys that could be traded would be Palmu. I mean, there's others as well, but obviously they'd have to have some of their younger players included to move some of their not so favorable contracts. Clearly a guy like Louis Eriksson or maybe even a Brandon Sutter would be preferable. If the NHL decided to offer some compliance buyouts, that would be like a miracle for Vancouver if they could move 1 or 2 of those contracts. But like I said before, Louis Eriksson may not be untradeable anymore. He's still going to have 2 years left, but once we get past the point of the current season that's coming up here, once that signing bonus of his is paid out, because it's a big chunk of next year's salary, then he's not going to have a lot of physical cash left. So if you look around the NHL teams that have the space but don't necessarily want to pay out a ton of cash, they could look to take this guy on and kind of get some other prospects or other assets out of Vancouver in exchange for doing that. So you're looking at teams like Ottawa, Detroit, New Jersey, teams that have the space to do it, but obviously want to recoup some additional assets for taking that on as they're going through a bit of a rebuild. So that might be a possibility. I think it's going to be a little bit easier here as time goes on, but if they can free up some money, obviously it's going to help a lot with signing these free agents. But like I said before, in my opinion, Markstrom should be the number 1 priority, and if the others can be retained as well, that's just an added bonus. So let me know, especially if you're Canucks fans. I know there's a lot of Canucks fans on YouTube who follow this channel. Of all 3 of these players, which one to you is the number 1 most important one to sign for the Vancouver Canucks in Jim Benning this offseason? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.